Hey guys, so today I'm going to be reading Renekton's lore. This is the expanded lore that just got put up today. So I'm going to go ahead and read this, and then hopefully some of the other characters will come out soon. Um, there was a couple days in between Azir and Xeros expanded lore, and then Nasus's and Renekton. So there probably will be a couple days gap. I'm hoping not, because I'm really finding these interesting, and I have a lot of fun reading them, and I hope that everybody enjoys listening to me reading them. So I'm just going to go in and do Renekton, the Butcher of the Sands. Blood and Vengeance. Renekton is a terrifying, rage-fueled ascended being from the scorched deserts of Shurima. Once he was his empire's most esteemed warrior, leading the armies of Shurima to countless victories. However, after the empire's fall, Renekton was entombed beneath the sands, and slowly, as the world turned and changed, he succumbed to insanity. Now free once more, he is utterly consumed with finding and killing his brother Nasus, who he blames, in his madness, for the centuries he spent in the darkness. Renekton was born to fight. From a young age, he was consistently getting into vicious brawls. He had no fear and was able to hold his own against much older children. It was often pride that led to these confrontations, as Renekton was unable to back down or let any insult pass. Every evening he came home with cuts and fresh bruises. While his more scholarly older brother Nasus disapproved of his street fighting, Renekton relished in it. Nasus soon moved away, having been chosen to join the elite Collegium of the Sun. In the years he was absent, Renekton's skirmishes became increasingly serious. On a rare visit home, Nasus was horrified to see his bloody young brother return home from yet another street fight. Fearing Renekton's violent nature would see him imprisoned in an early grave, Nasus helped him enlist into the Shuriman army. Officially, Renekton was too young for this duty, but his older brother's influence smoothed away this detail. The discipline and regimentation of the army was a blessing for Renekton. Within a few years he rose to become one of Shurima's most feared and capable war captains, as he fought on the front line in numerous wars of conquest to expand the empire. He garnered a reputation for ferocity and toughness, but also for honor and bravery. Nasus became a decorated general, and the two of them served in a number of campaigns together, remaining very close despite their inherent differences and frequent disagreements. Nasus's skill lay in strategy, logistics, and history. Renekton's lay in battle. Nasus planned the wars, and Renekton won them. Renekton earned the title Gatekeeper of Shurima after fighting in a desperate battle in one of the mountain passes bordering Shurima. An invading force had landed on the south coast, striking towards the isolated city of Zurida. If it was not halted, the city was certain to be razed and its populace massacred. Outnumbered 10 to 1, Renekton and a small contingent faced these aggressors, determined to buy time for the city to be evacuated. It was a battle that none expected Renekton to survive, let alone win. He held the pass for a day and a night, long enough for a relief force led by Nasus to arrive. With barely a handful of warriors left standing, none uninjured, Renekton was hailed a hero. Renekton served on the front lines for decades and never lost a battle. His presence was inspiring to those who fought alongside him and terrifying to his enemies. Victory after victory were his, and such his reputation that some wars were won without a sword even being lifted, enemy nations surrendering as soon as they heard Renekton was marching on them. Renekton was of middling years, a grizzled and battle-scarred veteran When word reached him that his brother was close to death, he raced back to the capital to find Nasus, a pale shadow of his former self, having been struck struck down by a debilitating, wasting malady. The sickness was incurable, similar to the rotting curse that is said to have cut down the entire noble line in antiquity. Nevertheless, Narcissus' greatness was recognized by one and all. As well as being highly decorated general, he curated the great library of Shurima and penned many of the finest literary works in the empire. The priesthood proclaimed that it would be in the sun's will that he undertake the Ascension's ritual. The whole city gathered to witness the holy rite, but the tragic illness had taken a terrible toll. Nasus no longer had the strength to scale the stairs to the Ascension dais. In the ultimate act of self-sacrifice and love, Renekton lifted his brother in his arms and climbed the final steps, fully expecting to be obliterated in the process by the holy energies of the sun disk. He deemed his sacrifice a small thing to ensure that his brother would live on. He was just a warrior, after all, albeit a talented one, while his brother was a peerless scholar, thinker, and general. Renekton knew that Shurima would need Nasus in the years to come. Renekton was not destroyed, however. Beneath the blinding radiance of the sun disk, both brothers were raised up and remade. When the light faded, two mighty ascendant beings stood before the onlookers. Nasus in his lean jackal-headed body, and Renekton in his immense crocodilian form. Their forms seemed apt. The jackal was often regarded as the most clever and cunning of beasts, and the fearless aggression of the crocodile fit Renekton perfectly. Shurima gave thanks to have these new demigods as guardians of the Emperor. Renekton had been a mighty war hero before, but now he was an ascended being, blessed with power beyond mortal understanding. He was stronger and faster than any regular man, and seemed virtually immune to pain. Though ascended beings were not immortal, their lifespans were dramatically increased so that they might serve the Empire for hundreds of years. With Renekton at the head of the Shuriman armies, the Empire's military was all but unstoppable. He had always been a ruthless commander and a ferocious fighter, but his new form gave him power beyond belief. He led the soldiers of Shurima to many bloody victories, neither giving nor expecting mercy. His legend spread far beyond the borders of the Empire, and it was his enemies that gave him the name Butcher of the Sands, a title he embraced. There were those, Nasus among them, who came to believe that a portion of Renekton's humanity had also been lost in his transformation. As the years progressed, he seemed to become crueler, relishing in the spilling of blood more than was natural. Whispers circulated of atrocities he committed in the name of war. Nevertheless, he was a staunch defender of Shurima, and he faithfully served the succession of empires, ensuring the security and greatness of Shurima for hundreds of years. During the reign of the Emperor Azir, word arrived that a magic being of fire had escaped the magical sarcophagus that bound it in its underground prison. It had laid waste to a Shuriman town before fleeing across the desert to the east. Renekton and his brother Nasus set forth to recapture this legendary foe. While they were absent, the young emperor, guided by the manipulations of his magus, Zeroth, attempted to join their ranks and become one of the Ascended. The results were catastrophic. Renekton and Nasus were a day's ride from the capital, but even so they felt the shockwave as the Ascension ritual went awry. Knowing something terrible had come to pass, they raced back to find the glorious city in ruins. Azir had been killed, along with most of the city's populace. The great sun disk was falling, drained of all of its power. At the epicenter of ruin, they encountered Azira, now a being of pure malevolent power. The brothers sought to bind Zeroth in the magical sarcophagus that had held the ancient being of fire. For a day and night they battled, but the magus was powerful and would not be held. He shattered the sarcophagus and assailed them with spells fueled by the power of the sun disk, which crashed into the ground as they fought. Knowing they could not destroy Zeroth, Renekton finally wrestled him into the depths of the tomb of the empires. At the bait of his brother sealed them inside forever. Knowing there was no way to stop Zeroth, Nasus reluctantly did as his brother ordered. As Renekton and Zeroth fell into the darkness, Nasus sealed the tomb for all eternity. In the darkness, Zeroth and Renekton continued their battle. For uncounted years they fought, and as the once great civilization of Shurima collapsed into the dust in the world above, Zeroth whispered poison in Renekton's ear, and gradually, as the centuries rolled on, his viperous words and the ever-present darkness took its toll. The Magus implanted the notion that in Renekton's mind that Nasus had sealed him in on purpose, jealous of his success and unwilling to share his ascension. Piece by piece, Renekton's sanity cracked. Zeroth drove a wedge into these cracks, corrupting his mind and twisting his perception of what was real and what was imagined. Thousands of years later, the Tomb of the Emperors was opened by the mercenary Sivir, freeing Renekton and Zeroth. Renekton roared his fury and thundered out into the Shuriman desert, sniffing the air for the scent of his brother. Renekton now roams the desert, seeking the death of Nasus, the traitor he believes left him to die. His grip on reality is tenuous at best, while there are moments when he resembles a proud, honorable hero of the past, much of the time he is little more than a devolved, hate-maddened beast, driven on by the thirst for blood and vengeance. Darkness renews. Am I a god? He no longer knows. Once, perhaps, when the sun disk gleamed like gold atop the palace of 10,000 pillars, he remembers carrying a withered ancient in his arms, and both borne into the sky by the sun's radiance. All his hurts and pains were washed away as the light remade him. If this memory is his, then was he once mortal? He thinks so, but he cannot remember. His thoughts are a cloud of doomflies, Madrid shattered memories buzzing angrily in his elongated skull. What is real? What am I now? This place, this cave under the sands, is it real? He believes so, but he is no longer sure he can trust his senses, for as long as he can remember, he knew only darkness, awful, unending darkness that clung to him like a shroud. But then the darkness broke apart, and he was hurled back into the light. He remembers clawing his way through the sands of the earth, buckled and heaved. As the earth buckled and heaved, the living rock grinding as something loud, long buried but all forgotten, heaved itself to the surface again. Towering statues erupted from beneath the stand, vast and terrible in their aspect. Armored warriors with demonic heads loomed over him, ancient gods of a long-dead culture. Bellicose phantoms rose from the sand, and he fled their wrath, escaping the rising city as light blazed and the moons of the stars wheeled overhead. He remembers staggering through the desert, his mind afire with visions of blood and betrayal, of titanic palaces and golden temples brought down in the blink of an eye. Centuries of progress undone for the sake of one man's vanity and pride. Was it his? He does not know, but he fears it might have been. The light that once remained his flesh now pains him. It burned him raw and seared his soul as he wandered the desert, lost and alone, tormented by a hatred he did not understand. He has taken refuge from its unforgiving light, but even there, squatting and weeping in this dripping cave, the whisperer has found him. The shadow on the wall slithers around him, always muttering, always conspiring to feed his bitterness. He presses long, gnarled hands that and in vicious ebon talons into his temples, but he cannot shut his consistent companion in the darkness out. He never could. The whisperer tells tales of shame and guilt. It speaks of thousands who died because of him, who never had the chance to live thanks to his failure. A part of him believes these to be honeyed falsehoods, twisted fictions told often enough that he can no longer sift truth from lies. The whisperer reminds him of the light being shut away, showing him the jackal face of his betrayer looking down on him as he condemned him to the abyssal dark for all eternity. Tears gather at the corners corners of his cataract eyes, and he now angrily wipes them away. The Whisperer knows every secret path into his mind, twisting every certainty he once clung to, every virtue that made him a hero, revered as god throughout Shurima. The name that has meaning to him, but fades like a shimmering mirage, remained bound within the prison of his mind and chains of madness. His eyes, once so clear-sighted and piercing, were misted with eons he spent in the endless dark. His skin was tough as armored bronze, but now it's dull and cracked, dull dust spilling from its many wounds like sand from an executioner's hourglass. Perhaps he is dying. He thinks he might be, but the thought does not trouble him overmuch. He has lived an age and suffered too long to fear extinction. Worse, he is no longer sure he can die. He looks at the weapon before him, a crescent blade axe without a handle. It belonged to a warrior king of Ithaca, but a fleeting memory of breaking its haft has broken its bearer's army returns to him. He remembers remaking it, but not why. Perhaps he will use it to slice open his rigid throat and see what happens. Will blood or dust flow? No, he will not die here. Not yet. The Whisperer tells him his fate has another role for him. He has blood yet to spill, a thirst for vengeance yet to slake. The Jekyll face of the one who condemned him to the darkness floats to his mind, and each time he sees it, a hatred carved on his heart boils to the surface. He looks up at the cave walls as the shadows part, revealing crude daubings and portals, ancient flaking images so faded they might almost be invisible, depict of the desert city in all its glory. Rivers of cold, clear water flow in its pillared thoroughfares, and the light-giving rays of the sun bring forth wondrous greenery from the newly fertile landscape. He sees a king in a hawk-headed helm atop the towering palace, and a dark figure at his side. Beneath them there are two giants in armor, wrought for war. One is a hulking crocodilian beast, armed with a crescent-bladed axe, and the other is a jekyll-headed warrior scholar. In a reptilian form he recognized the mortal's odd expression from his ascension incarnation. He turns his gaze upon the remaining warrior. Time has all but erased the angular script beneath the faded image, but enough is still legible for him to make out his betrayer's name. Nasus, he says. Brother. And with the source of his torment named, his own identity is revealed like the sun emerging from behind a storm cloud. I am Renekton, he hissed through hooked teeth, the butcher of the sands. He lifts his crescent blade and rises to his full height as the dust of ages falls away from his armored form. Old wounds sealed, broken skin knits of flesh, and color returns to his supple, jaded crocodilian skin as purpose fills him. Once the sun remade him, now darkness is his ally. Strength is his ally. Strength surges through his monstrously powerful body, muscles swelling and his eyes burning red with hatred for Nasus. He hears the Whisperer speak once again, but he no longer heeds his voice. He clenches a clawed fist and touches the tip of his blade to the image of the jackal-headed warrior. You left me alone in the darkness, brother, he said. You will die for that betrayal. So that is the end of Renekton's extended lore. I hope everybody liked it, and if you did, you can leave a like and you can subscribe. If you have any people that you wish to have me read their lore for, then you can leave that in a comment, or if you just have any questions or comments about the video, you can also leave those in the comments as well. And I hope everybody enjoyed this reading. Hopefully we'll get some more. I'm assuming Severe will be the next person put out. There were a couple days in between Azir and Xeros lore being released, and then Nasus and Renekton's lore being released. So there'll probably be a couple days in between that until I have till those come out, I will try and get some other lore up. I believe Jin would be the next person that I have to do. If you have anybody that you would prefer to see, just let me know. And I hope that everybody has a nice night.